Alright folks, so in today's video we are going to program the Wouxon KG-UV8E. It's a tri-band handheld radio that recently showed up at the TheSmokinApe shack. We're going to use a programming cable. In this case, this is a prolific cable that I've had laying around, and it plugs in using the Kenwood style adapter to the speaker and mic jacks on the side of the radio. You must make sure that that is firmly seated in the radio. Now, one of the things that we're going to learn during the course of this video is this might not have been the best choice to attempt this with. With the USB side of the cable plugged in, I'm going to power up the radio. And I want you to notice that immediately it starts receiving a signal. And that's not a good thing. But I proceeded ahead and I went into my device manager and I checked my COM ports. And I can see that the COM port has detected, or the computer has detected, that prolific cable on COM port 5. When I would attempt to use Chirp, I would get that the radio could not be found, and then I went back into Device Manager and the COM port was now gone. I did some research and determined that there are a recommended cable set for these Wouxon radios, and this actually uses a Silicon Labs chip. It doesn't use a prolific, and it doesn't use another standard, which is the FTDI chip. What I have come to learn is that some people have been successful in programming it with the FTDI chip. Anyhow, if you do go with this cable, the Silicon Labs, you're going to need to install some drivers in the event that your computer doesn't detect them. And I'll include a link to this website where you can get Windows 10 drivers. Now, the PowerWorks website did have drivers, but they didn't have them for Windows 10. I'll include all those links below. Now, I don't own a FTDI chipped cable, so I was a little concerned that I wasn't going to be able to get this job done. And then I realized that I had this older cable that is kind of like a multi-radio cable, and it uses a CH340 chipset. Anyhow, I gave it a try, and it worked. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to finish up programming this radio like we intended to do from the start. So with the Abri CH340 cable plugged in, I was able to go in Device Manager and see it detected on COM port 6, which is important. And then I was able to go in and drive down a little bit further onto that device, and I was able to see the drivers and the manufacturers of the drivers. And indeed, it is a company based out of China, which is where the cable shipped from. But I just put this up here for informational purposes in the event that you try to buy or have one of these cables on hand. So here we are with Chirp, and I'm hoping this goes a little bit better. So what I want to do from the menus, I want to go to Radio, and then I want to go Download from Radio. When this happens, I'll get a dialog box that's already pre-configured because I tested this earlier. As I showed in Device Manager, I'm on COM port 6, so I want to make sure that that's highlighted. And then from the vendor, I want to pick Wouxon or Wouxon, depending upon where you're from. And then the model I want to pick is the KG-UV8E. Then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm going to get a message that says, do you want to proceed with an experimental driver? And I live life dangerously, so I'm going to pick yes. And now it is cloning from my radio. We're pulling the configuration from my radio into Chirp, where I'll be able to save it, edit it, and then upload it back to my radio. This process is going to take a few minutes, and while it's happening, I get nothing on the display of the radio itself. It looks as if the radio is turned off. Now that we're done, let's go ahead and step through the configuration. So taking a look at what is downloaded, I can see that the radio comes with 3 channels already programmed into the radio. This radio can hold up to 999 channels, which is fantastic. So one of the things that we can do is go over here again to Radio, and then you can import from a stock configuration. So if you go over here, you can see that there's DE FreeNet frequencies, Marine UHF channels, NOAA weather alerts. I like to have the NOAA weather alerts, so let me just go ahead and pick that. And then you can see what happens here is I get a list of all of the different NOAA frequencies. Now, if I import these by clicking OK, what will happen is that this will overwrite channels 1, 2, and 3, which already has memories. So one of the things that I can do is I can just click this +1. And what that'll do is now it'll start with channel 5 and run through channel 14 and import those frequencies into the configuration that I can upload back to the radio. So I'm just going to click OK, and now you can see those frequencies have been added here. Another thing that people like to do, and I'll click on Radio and import from stock config, and then maybe I want to import FRS and GMRS frequencies. This time I'm going to hit +10, and that takes me down to 11, but I'll be overwriting some of my channels. So I'll +1 all the way up to 15. Once I do that, these frequencies get added in as well. Now, one of the things that I want to make sure that I do is I want to make sure that duplex is off. And what that means is that I can no longer transmit on this frequency. And I may want to add this frequency. Let me just go ahead and highlight it here. I may want to skip this frequency when I'm scanning, because when I'm scanning I don't want it to land on a weather channel and get stuck. So what I'll need to do for this particular code plug or this particular configuration is I'll have to go through all of these as well, these FRS and GMRS channels, and then I'll have to change this duplexing to off. Another thing is that we like to go to this radio, and then we like to query a data source. And Repeater Book has made this very easy. I can come in here and I can do a proximity query. And then when I do that, I can type in any location I want. So let's just go ahead and type in a location, and let's just say CHICAGO for Chicago, and I want to get everything within 25-mile radius. And let's just say I want to take a look at 2-meter band. What happens now is I'll get this secondary tab. It's titled Repeater Book, and I'll go ahead and I'll click on that tab. And then what you see are a series of 2-meter repeaters. They're filled out with the tones if they're required, DCTS tones. The duplexing is set in the correct direction. The offset is set. Mode is set, and there's also some comments here. So one of the things that I can do is I can just take this, highlight, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to pick copy. Then I'm going to go back over to my other tab, and let's just start down here at 70. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to pick paste, and voila, there are my repeaters into this particular code plug. Now what's nice about this is I can go back and I can do the same thing for the 1.25 meter band and the 70 centimeter band. Okay, now that we're done programming our channels into the code plug, we're going to go over here to the settings tab. From the settings tab, there are a number of configuration changes that can be made. So we'll just start at the top and walk through some of the more popular settings. Power on message, you can change from a bitmap to your battery volts. Let's just go ahead and change that. You can change your language from Chinese to English. I'm not going to do that because I don't speak Chinese. Timeout timer, timeout alarm, Roger beep on or off. You can enable power saving features. Keypad lock, keypad beep, I have that enabled. The backlight is set to 8 seconds. I'm going to up that to 15 because it takes me a while sometimes to make a decision, and I hate when the light goes out. Down here you have some stuff about DTMF, PTIDs, ring time, scan modes. So you can set your scan to end when it times out, or you can set it to end when the carrier stops. You can enable your Vox. There's stuff down here about priority channel switch. I'm not 100% sure how that works. You can set your radio for either a radio or for a repeater, and that's if you want to do some of the duplexing functionalities that come with this radio. And then here's some repeater settings, and I'm not 100% sure what these mean. I did look at them in the instruction manual, but I do not recall off the top of my head. We're just going to leave them as is for right now. There's some other settings down here that you can play with, but we're not going to mess with any of these. Now you can go into your VFO specific settings, and then you can set your work mode to either VFO, or you can go into channel mode where it shows you either the channel number and the frequency, or the channel number and the name. Let's go ahead and pick channel number and the name. And then you can also pick which channel would be your default VFO channel. You can pick a default frequency. This is tied to your channel name here. If you're in VFO mode, it would be to just whatever frequency that you program in. You can set your power high to low. You can set your bandwidth from narrow to wide. In this case we want wide. That's what we programmed into the channel. You have the ability to mute, and then you can control your step or your squelch, and the squelch is set to 5. You have the same settings for VFO-B. We are going to just leave this one in VFO mode. And then there's some other key settings. Here, you can change your display message. Right now it says Wouxon.com. We'll go change this. There you go, it's set to the Smoking Ape. You can change this ANI code. I'm not 100% sure what that does. And then here you can change what the PF buttons on the side of the radio do, which is pretty handy. Down here under frequency limits, you can actually change the frequencies for what the radio can receive or transmit on. I wouldn't extend beyond what is recommended. That could damage the radio. But it's very popular for folks to restrict the TX limits on these radios to limit them just to ham bands. And you can do that on the 2 meter, the 1.25 meter, or the 70 centimeter bands. Down here you also have some OEM info. This is non-configurable, but this is probably just information that is baked into the firmware. So you have the model number, the OEM string 2. So this actually comes on when you turn the radio on. Your software version and your OEM date. So this is 5/11/2019. So let's go back to the configuration. Once your changes are made, the next thing that you want to do is you want to come back to radio, and then you just want to go upload to radio. Make sure all these configuration settings are the same or correct. Hit OK. You get the experimental driver message. We're going to hit yes. And now it's writing to my radio. And again, the radio appears to be off. The screen is blank. Once that's done, the radio reboots itself, and I can see some of the configuration changes have been made, and we will switch to that in 1 second. Alright, now let's power this radio up and see what we got. And you can see it goes straight into the voltmeter like we wanted. The top of the screen has the Smoking Ape like we programmed, and now you can see all the channels that we put in there displayed by their channel name. And that's going to do it. So go ahead and click the thumbs up, like, subscribe, share somewhere on another social media platform. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it.